Shalom Aleichem, Mishpachim. All right, let us do this. Let us continue my reading of Likkutei Sichos, teachings on the Torah from the Lubavitcher Rebbe Menachem Mendel Schneerson, and this is Sefer Vayikra. All right, let us continue. The conditional guilt offering. The conclusion of Parashas Vayikra mentions the conditional guilt offering which a person would bring when he was unsure if he had committed a sin. To give an example, a person had 2 pieces of fat before him and ate one of them. On being informed that one of the pieces wasn't kosher, the person is obligated to bring an animal sacrifice referred to as an ashem, tolui, a conditional guilt offering. There is a difference of opinion among our sages as to whether or not a person who slaughters an animal designated for this offering outside the Beis Hamikdash is liable for keres if he slaughters it intentionally, or is required to bring a sin offering if he slaughters it unintentionally, as one is liable for slaughtering an animal designated for other sacrifices outside the Beis Hamikdash. Keres is death by the hand of heaven. Rabbi Meir holds the person liable, while the sages do not. Their rationale is that since the conditional guilt offering is brought because of a doubt, it is possible that the person never sinned at all. Accordingly, it is not appropriate to hold him liable for slaughtering the animal outside the Beis Hamikdash, because it is possible that there was no obligation to bring the sacrifice in the first place. In his Mishnah Torah, the Rambam rules according to the sage's opinion. There is another difference of opinion among our sages concerning a conditional guilt offering. This involves a person who prepares a conditional guilt offering, but resolves the doubt, discovering whether he sinned or not, before the sacrifice is slaughtered. In this instance, the offering is not sacrificed. Rabbi Meir maintains that the designated animal should go out to pasture with the herd. The animal loses its sanctified status. The sages maintain that the animal should pasture until it contracts a blemish, that the animal retains its sacred nature. As such, it cannot be redeemed until it contracts a blemish which disqualifies it for use as a sacrifice. In this instance as well, the Rambam rules according to the sages, giving the rationale that a person's heart is contrite because of his sins. Because he designated the animal as a sacrifice because of a doubt, he decided in his heart to consecrate it. The question arises, according to the sages' opinion and the Rambam's ruling, that even when a person discovers that he definitely did not sin, the animal involved remains consecrated. Because of the decision he made in his heart, it appears that when a person is in doubt, the animal designated for the sacrifice should be considered consecrated. As such, it is difficult to understand the first ruling of the sages, and the Rambam mentioned previously that even if the designated animal was slaughtered outside the Beis Hamikdash, the usual prohibitions do not apply. This difficulty can be resolved as follows. There are 2 dimensions to the sanctification of sacrifices. The first is relevant to man, how the person must conduct himself with regard to the animal he consecrated. In this regard, it is sufficient to know that he made a decision in his heart to consecrate it. This applies even if the person later resolves the doubt as to whether or not he had sinned. The second is relevant to the Torah's abstract criteria. In this context, an animal designated as a conditional guilt offering is consecrated only when a person indeed sinned, although he himself is in doubt about the matter. When he is unsure as to whether or not he sinned, he can gain atonement via a conditional guilt offering. When, by contrast, a person knows he has sinned, atonement comes through a sin offering. Accordingly, the rationale that a person's heart is contrite because of his sins, and he decided within his heart to consecrate the animal, is significant only with regard to the aspect of the consecration that affects man. With regard to the Torah's abstract criteria, however, the animal is considered a sacrifice only when the person actually sinned. Since it is possible that he did not sin, and thus, according to the Torah's abstract criteria, the animal is not considered consecrated. He would not be liable for keres for willfully slaughtering it outside the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, he is not required to bring a sin offering if he slaughtered it outside the Beis Hamikdash without knowing of the prohibition, because only when the penalty for willfully transgressing a prohibition is kares is one required to bring a sin offering for its unwitting transgression. The value of money. There is another concept associated with conditional guilt offering. Although a sin offering is brought when one knows that one has sinned, and a conditional guilt offering is brought when one is in doubt about the matter, the conditional offering is more expensive than the sin offering. Ordinarily, the minimal value for a sin offering was a danka, while the minimal value for a conditional guilt offering was 2 selaim, worth 48 danka. Rebbe Yonah explained this as follows. Fundamentally, the atonement brought about by a sacrifice comes from the person's feelings of teshuvah. When a person knows he has sinned, he is naturally aroused to sincere feelings of regret. But when a person is unsure, we have to seek means to inspire such feelings. For this reason, the conditional guilt offering cost more than a sin offering. The rationale is, however, insufficient, for although teshuvah is necessary, it is not the only element involved. The actual offering of the sacrifice has the power to bring atonement and remove the blemishes created by sin. Thus, the different kinds of sacrifices were ordained according to the nature of the blemish created. This leads to the conclusion that the reason a conditional guilt offering cost more than a sin offering was not merely to inspire sincere teshuvah, but also because a conditional guilt offering must atone for a greater blemish. This raises a question. How is it that the blemish created when one is unsure is greater than that created when one is certain of having sinned? Subconscious motivation. This question can be resolved as follows. In general, sacrifices atone for sins committed unintentionally, for even a commandment violated unknowingly requires atonement. Although the person did not intentionally sin, the fact that his unconscious thoughts led to such behavior is an indication that he is spiritually lacking. For if he was not lacking, he would not have sinned, even unintentionally, as it is written, "No evil shall befall the righteous." A person is held responsible, and therefore must bring a sacrifice for a sin committed unintentionally because it is his fault that he sinned. Before committing the sin, he conducted himself in a beast-like manner. This strengthened his animal soul, leading to his unintentional commission of sin. This reflects a further point. A person's unconscious behavior, what he does without thinking, is often a powerful indicator of his nature, reflecting his fundamental concerns and sources of pleasure. A tzaddik derives pleasure from godliness. Therefore, his deeds involve good and holiness. When, by contrast, a person unknowingly commits a sin, this indicates that undesirable factors are his source of pleasure. Indeed, from a certain perspective, the blemish generated by committing a sin unknowingly can be considered more severe than that resulting from the conscious commission of a sin. The fact that a person consciously performs a deed says nothing about the extent of his involvement. There are times when he does something willingly, but his heart and mind are elsewhere. But when an act is performed without conscious volition, it reveals something about a person's true nature, telling us about the inner I that lies deeper than his conscious self. Instinctively, this inner I directs his conduct, leading him to perform certain deeds unconsciously. Food for the soul. The above also enables us to understand a statement of the Arizal, that a person who is careful not to eat even the slightest amount of chametz on Pesach can be confident that he will not sin throughout the year to come. On the surface, this statement is problematic. Man has been given free choice, and thus has the ability to determine his own conduct. How is it possible to say that his taking care not to eat chametz for 8 days will cause free choice to be taken away from him? The resolution is that the Arizal is speaking about sins committed unknowingly. Although a person did not partake of chametz on Pesach, it is possible that he will willfully perform a transgression, because he retains his free will. But his care in not eating chametz will affect his inner nature, endowing it with a tendency toward holiness. As a result, he will not be subconsciously drawn to sin. All right. We'll finish there. It's really important. When I was as I was reading this, I was thinking that back in the biblical days, when there were unintentional sin offerings, guilt offerings, sin offerings, is to really find a point in your life, in your religious life. Find a point in your spiritual connection with God, in your relationship with God, and your relationship with just yourself. Find a point that you come to where you say to yourself, who am I? Really? Who am I? What am I doing here? And weigh your actions out. Weigh them out. Think about your past, the history of your life, and your here and now also, and realize that we are not perfect people by any means. So it's safe to say that each and every one of us has sinned, whether unintentionally or intentionally, or both. And it's safe to say that we should weigh these out, and we should realize that we have these sins under weighing us down, and we should evaluate and balance and evaluate our beings, our actions, our past actions, and our here and now actions. We should look at them in ways of resentment. We should resent them. We should resent our sin. We should think that I have no reason committing such a vile act. I have no reason to do such a vile act, whether it may be violence or verbal lashon hara or theft. You have to come to that point religiously, spiritually, and relationally that we have no reason being here in these actions, in these sinful acts. And if you put two and two together and realize that the only thing that comes from sinful acts is destruction. And how do you destroy? What is the remedy of destruction? Something needs to be put back together. In the context of what we're reading here in Likkutei Sichos, is that there needed to be atonement, and that really restored someone's well-being and soul back to its peaceful state of being, its original state of being. And so we need to, what can we do? What can you and I do nowadays, since there are no more sacrifices, no more animal sacrifices in the temple? What can we do now, you and I? And really, it's all about the steps we take. It's all about the steps we take and how we crawl in this life, how we walk. And I'm really speaking in a literal sense, and I'm also speaking inwardly as well, spiritually, the inner depth of how we walk, where we walk. And spiritually, you need to make a choice where you go with your conduct, where you go with your emotions, where you go. And physically, you need to make a choice where you go with your legs, what you do with your hands. And you need to, but none of these evaluations None of these evaluations, if you're on a level of such religiosity with Hashem, and I mean relationally, if you're on such a level, and you've declared with your heart that your life needs to serve God, and you've declared with your heart and your soul and your meodecha that your veriness, the veriness of you've declared that you belong to Hashem, and that so the goal is to, we need to realize that since we make this declaration, it's important that we match with our ways of walking in this world. It's important that we match the words we speak of declaration to God with our where we walk, what we do with our hands, what we do in our minds, and our emotions. All these things need to be balanced. I'm sorry that I'm ranting, but I'm trying to get to a really key point here, where the matter of fact is that life can throw a curveball, and we can swing and miss so many times. And the main goal to atone for in today's world, for atonement, to be restored and built up again, and be made new. The main goal is to come to terms and come to realization that we are in fact flawed, because of the sin of the Eitz Hadas, the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So with that in mind, that there is sin in this world, although I'm sure everyone on earth has sinned, not one person has not sinned, but although we have the ability to sacrifice ourselves, whatever, or sacrifice our spirits, our lives, to make that extra push, that extra move, that extra oomph, in life, in our actions, in our midot, our character, to make that extra oomph, that move, to lean towards the good inclination, It's all about positivity. It's all about the goodness of Hashem. And if you incline yourself to this goodness of Hashem, that's what matters. Is you have to keep getting up every day. Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai vechai yom, shechazarta benishmati bechemla, rabo emun osecha. Thank you, my living and eternal King, for you have wonderfully restored my soul. Great is your faithfulness. And when we live like this, when we are giving thanks to Hashem, and truly giving thanks to Hashem for waking us up once again another day, that's what we should be doing. Then we should follow that up with no separation of ourselves, of our soul, of our eyes, of our mind, no separation with Hashem. We should be conscious, God conscious, and that's what matters, and that's what brings atonement, and that's how we come to make this world whole, in unison with Hashem, is that we are in God consciousness all the time, that we are thinking of God, minds on God, and we put Hashem in our mind. And that's what matters, is that you put Hashem in your mind. You think about God. Think about God. And that's what matters. You should always think about God, because where your mind is what will lead you. Wherever your mind is, that'll lead you. That'll lead you there, whether it be good or bad. Whatever's in your mind is going to lead you. Really, it will. It can lead you, I should say. I'm sorry, but it can lead you. And the mind is powerful. We can think bad thoughts, and the bad is just as powerful. I'm not going to say it's just as powerful as the good, but I'm going to say that it doesn't lack. The bad thoughts, they don't lack. They're there and they're powerful. There's nothing less of them. They will move you. They will move you. So you have to transform your mind. Transform your mind into a God-conscious, focused mind. And that's how we bring atonement, because when you have that God consciousness and you think goodliness, good thoughts, then that'll play a role in your transformation. That'll play a role in the transformation of yourself. And God will lead you, and that's all we need. We need to make that first move, that initial step. And God will do his part, and he will lead you. God will do his part. God doesn't expect it all to be put on our shoulders. He has a role in this world. He has a role in our lives. So invite God and into your mind, into your thoughts. Put him there and let God do his job, and stop veering to the left and veering to the right. And that's where our mistake is we go to the left off key, we go to the right off track, and that's what keeps us always having to make atonement. So it matters what's in our mind. It matters because what's in our mind will lead us, and will lead us to action. Really, whatever's in your mind will lead you to the action of whatever thought it may be. So just keep that in mind. And have a wonderful evening, and Shavua Tov.